Why is Japanese art between the 17th and the 19th centuries so different from European art? The post-Renaissance period pushed artists around the world to seek more realistic representations and more accurate textures. The question is, why did Japan not follow the trend? While Europe lived its days of realism, romanticism, and impressionism, Japan kept its art focused on simple representations. The balanced use of pastel and vivid colors created an interesting environment that has become a Japanese cultural landmark. To comprehend this phenomenon, we need to understand the Japanese culture at the time. The Japan we know today is a very young country, reformed by a new constitution after World War II, on May 3, 1947. Long before that, in the early 17th century, Japan experienced a time known as the Edo period. Between 1603 and 1868, Japan was ruled by the Tokugawa shogunate through a feudal system. This period was marked by the presence of the samurai, the main class of warriors in the shogunate. In addition to that, in face of various problems with the Europeans, especially the Portuguese, the shogunate decided to close itself off from the world, culturally and commercially. However, there were only two exceptions: the Dutch East India Company and China, then ruled by the Qing dynasty. The Edo period was marked by a reclusive Japan and closed to the rest of the world. This measure resulted in Japan's political, economic, religious, and cultural disconnection from the rest of the world. Although the country was closed, Japan saw great economic and urban growth during the Edo period. It is at this point that we can understand Japanese art. During this period, an artistic movement called ukiyo-e gained strength and became the most prolific artistic bias in Japanese history. Ukiyo-e, which translated literally means pictures of the floating world, was the way that Japanese artists found to represent the various changes that took over their nation. The evolution of ukiyo-e accompanied Japan's changes during the Edo period, moving from representations of a simpler countryside life to the new urban life of the Japanese people. At the same time, there was great respect for the characteristic symbol of the region, focusing especially on the nature of Japan. In fact, the very name of the movement, Pictures of the Floating World, makes a lot of sense, as Japan had always been a kind of separate universe from the rest of the world. No one knows how humans arrived in Japan, or even where its history actually begins. Another curious point is the language. It is very easy for us to trace the origins of languages in Europe, as English, German, and Dutch derive from Germanic, while Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and French derive from Latin. But where does Japanese come from? There is no exact answer to this day. Apparently, it is a totally original language. So is ukiyo-e a totally original artistic style? Well, not exactly. If we think that Japan was open until the 16th century, we can see some similarities between European and Japanese styles. Of course, we are talking about a time where communication was very slow, so it's very likely that Japanese did not come under the great influence of Da Vinci, Raffaello, and Michelangelo. However, it is virtually certain that they had medieval influence, even if it was just a little. It is possible to see similarity between the use of colors between medieval paintings and ukiyo-e, as well as the use of textures in the paintings. The texture is also similar when we look, as an example, to the skin tone used, always back to a paler tone. Furthermore, the two-dimensional concept is very strong in both. Finally, the Edo period was essential in guaranteeing Japan a cultural stability that was very different from the rest of the world. Even after the cultural and commercial reopening to the rest of the world, the Japanese maintained the fundamentals of ukiyo-e in the following century, valuing the tradition of this art. You can see ukiyo-e's influence throughout Japanese cultural aesthetics, from subtle forms like advertising strategies to more overt forms like Japanese animated style called anime. A period that effectively closed Japan served as a fertile ground for the creation and solidification of a cultural strand that lasts more than 4 centuries. Perhaps this is one of the best examples to understand one of art's greatest powers, the creation of tradition.